Okay, it's the end of the session. I'm here with Chibi. He's a little cutie. He's 14 years old. And this is Buddy. Buddy, sit. Well, this is the back of Buddy, and this is the roadmap to success. We primarily worked with Buddy in this session. So basically, the first thing I want to talk about is what we just got done talking about off camera. So the Guardian we have in the house, it's a really nice, it's a nice, wonderful house, and it's got a little bit of a front yard. Are you all uncomfortable? How about that? More comfortable for you, Buddy? It's like, no, I want to get down there. I want some more treats. So one of Buddy's problems is he's territorial. He likes to charge the front of the house. So I'm going to talk about some maintenance things here in a second, but one of the things you might want to do is have him conditioned that when somebody's walking by the front of the fence, that's actually a good thing and not something he has to guard for. Now, when I do this, what we want to do is we want to kind of create a progression. The easiest version of it possible, and working our way towards the more difficult or the realistic realistic situation. So basically what I would do is, because there's a fence and you can see through the fence. So what I would do is I would first just have him in the front yard. Now, setting him up for success, we can exercise him first. Remember, exercise, then he needs 10 minutes to recover. You should stop panting. Then we would do this, put him in the front yard, you go out the fence yourself, and then just walk by the fence. And if cheese is okay with him, we don't know, the Guardian doesn't know yet. I would get some string cheese, it's like a tube, and slice it so it looks like a bunch of nickels, white nickels. And since it's a green grass, the white from the string cheese usually shows up pretty well. So basically, as you're walking, and if he's barking at you, don't do it. Just walk back. No, I didn't ask for a bark. Yes. Yes, I'm going to block that visual. Usually Buddy's the one that's barking. So basically, if he's barking, don't do it. Just walk back and forth in front of the house. Are you saying you want to get to him? Okay. All right, Buddy. Chibi's very, very determined. So come. That's passive training. We're going to talk about that in a sec. Okay, so basically you want to walk back and forth, you and your husband, and maybe as a couple or separately, and then you have these little medallions provided he's okay with them. So give him a couple of those and just see how he does. Look at his stool about 8 hours later. Is it solid? If it is, he probably is okay. Cheese is fine for most dogs, but some dogs are lactose intolerant. So if not, then you find some other treat that's going to show up well on the grass, but a higher value treat. So you or your husband are going to be walking by, and when he's there and he's not freaking out, you're just going to gradually throw a piece of, make sure he's looking at you when you throw it, and throw it over the fence. And then when he gets it, you can come up with a word that means like a positive word, say friendly or something like that. Oh, there's a little bird in your palm tree. That's what it is. Okay, so basically every other step you're going to throw a piece of treat, and then if he's still chewing, wait for him to stop chewing, then come up and throw it. We get to that side, just turn around and walk back and forth. So you want to do this yourselves. I would have you guys do it separately and then as a couple to the point where he's like following you along the side of the fence and he feels really good. The next stage would be to do it when you have one of your neighbors. Now I'd find one of your neighbors who's going to the fast movement is going to attract more of attention. So what I would do is I would first, when you enlist one of your neighbors, find a neighbor that's not going to be super loud and boisterous. And then basically I would have your neighbor wait off to the side so they can't see, maybe behind the car. And then you and your husband walk once or twice and repeat the exercise. So you walk once, throw in the treats, then you come this way and you walk back this way and throw the treats. Then you talk to your neighbor, and then your neighbor walks with you. Now, when you're doing this, I would like you here. So this is the fence. I'd like the neighbor next, or you next, and then the neighbor on the other side of you. So your neighbor, you're going to walk with your neighbor, and you're going to still throw the treats. Now, if he barks, we want to increase distance. Anytime a dog is reactive, the best thing you do is increase distance. So then walk on the grass between the sidewalk and the street. If you have to, do it on the days where your street cleaning is like today, and then walk in the street. We want to find enough distance where he'll watch you with the neighbor without reacting. Now, since you're with him and you do one or two passes without the neighbor, he should be relaxed and comfortable doing that. And if you can't find a distance, then go back to just you guys doing it a couple more days and then try it again. And then try neighbors of different ilks. Sometimes a neighbor who has a beard or somebody with a hat. There's sometimes triggers that we don't know what they are. So if he does bark at a neighbor, kind of take some notes of that neighbor. Okay, and keep on moving further away until, if you have to get to the other side of the street, then it's probably too intense. Then look at, but if you exercise him first, that will really help. So the neighbor had a beard, the neighbor had a hat, the neighbor had glasses, or was tall or fat or whatever it was. And eventually you might identify, you know what, he doesn't like people with beards. And then we can practice specifically with that. So the idea is, so first it's you guys, and do that for a couple days to a week until, he just is like, when you guys pass in front, this is a great thing. Then you do it with your neighbor, and at first you're throwing the treat, and eventually You want to get to the point where maybe you throw a treat, then the neighbor throws the next treat, and then they're going over the fence. Eventually, you'd like to switch it. So it would be, if here's the fence, then it would be the neighbor, then you on the other side. So the neighbor's closer. And the neighbor's just going to throw those medallions over. And I would just do maybe about 3 or 4 passes. Well, keep it less than like 5 minutes maximum, but really about 1, 2, 3 minutes would be ideal. And then find another neighbor to do this with. And so the neighbors, especially that walk by the most, if they go on walks or whatever, would be great. Now, when you're doing this, don't do it when there's kids running around. There's people doing the weed or the leaf blowers, or mowing the lawn, or construction, or traffic, or any of those things. That's going to be what we call trigger stacking. That's multiple things going on. So what we want to do is we want to create the easiest scenario possible, and then have the dog start practicing having good, positive experiences. Now, once you get to the point where you can walk with the neighbor, and the neighbor is closer to the fence than you are, and he doesn't bark at all for 2 passes, then after that, and then the 3rd pass, you would stop there in the corner. Your neighbor walks by themselves. And the idea is now he's kind of warmed up, and now the neighbor's just throwing those medallions over the deal. I usually throw it about every other step. And again, if you have to be in the grass between the street and the sidewalk, that's fine. Or if you have to be right in the street. But if gradually you want to keep on doing it until eventually they can walk by just right on the sidewalk. So then you would find another neighbor and repeat this process. Now, you might also, if you don't feel comfortable with your neighbors at first, ask a friend to do it. And if your neighbor is fearful of the dog, do not do it with that neighbor first. We want to find somebody that's very comfortable with the dog, that doesn't see it as a negative, because the dogs are very perceptive and they'll understand, oh, that person is not comfortable being here, so I'm going to help bark at them and make them go away. Now, one of the things that he's used to doing, and the video that we went over above will really help conditioning him to go away. And we went all over the place in the yard, but I would like you to pay particular attention is having him going all the way to the fence and then coming away from the fence. And I would actually, when he comes away from you, instead of saying come for that point, so for about a week, follow the instructions I went over above, except for make him sit like we did at the end. But after about a week, what he'd like to do is maybe have the treat and train. If you order that, it's called a treat, the letter N train. It's about $100. Put that at your fence, have him go over there to get it, and then so you press the button, it beeps, and then the kibble comes out. He runs over there and gets it. Then you call him away from the fence, and I want you to assign a command word that means to move away from the fence. Call it retreat, flee, distance, away. Come up with a fun word, preferably. So what we're doing is helping him practice moving away from the fence, maybe to the carport. And then when he comes to you, give him that and say, retreat, or whatever the word is. So that way we're helping him practice moving away. Now we do this at first when nobody's there. Then gradually we start doing when we have the neighbors that they throw the treat and he's comfortable. So they throw a treat, and maybe at that point they wouldn't throw the treat because that would probably keep him there. They just walk by, and then as soon as they're there and he's looking at him, he's kind of patrolling. Let me back up. First stage, you would do it, just put the treat and train and put it in different parts of the lawn. Don't always put it in the same spot, but against the fence. And just have him practice moving away. Do that for about a week to 10 days until you can say away or whatever the word is, and he runs away from the fence back to the carport. The next stage would be to do it without the treat and train, and you have the neighbor. Now, when the neighbor comes up, he's going to go looking for that cheese or whatever the treat is. So he runs up there, and the neighbor's not going to throw the cheese, and then you're going to say away or whatever the command word is. He comes to you. At that point, you want to maybe give him the cheese over here. So now we're teaching him moving away from the deal when people are there is also desirable. And these are people that he knows and he doesn't feel uncomfortable with, so he's not barking at. So we're and this is kind of a little bit, trying to show you some shaping on the floor, trying to teach him to roll over, but it's the same sort of principle. We're making the easiest version possible, then gradually working our way up to more and more realistic, and eventually get to the point where all the sorts of neighbors combine, they can throw treats, and eventually, even if they don't throw a treat, you could actually use the treat and train and then put the treat and train over there. When you see somebody walking by, you press the button, he runs over to the treat and train because he hears the ding and gets a treat, and then he's conditioned to run away from the fence when people come instead of barking at them. Now, another thing that we want to do is called maintenance. Hey, buddy, you want another treat? It's like, yeah, just don't put me on your lap. I meant him, buddy, but your name actually is Buddy. Sit. Come. would be, and I talked about in the video above, but we have kind of a paned window here. So get paper, measure exactly how it is, cut out those and get white paper. Now you have kind of pink accent color, so if you want to add a little color to it, but don't get construction paper. Make it just regular paper, so that way it allows filter light to come in. But all you want to do is do it about really to about where that shelf is, at the top of the shelf. Not quite, the shelf is a little bit higher, so there's the pane that's not quite that high. So you do all those, Buddy runs over there, he can't see. That way when he hears the sound, he runs over there, he doesn't think his bark made them move away. I would do the same thing with these windows, probably up until, these are more traditional windows, so I do it everything below the break. So that way he can't go over there, anywhere he goes, he can't see out in the front. Now, you can also do some other things to help him have a good response. Now, you have, is it your doorbell that makes the sound? So what you could do is I would do this. There we go. Buddy, Buddy, come. Buddy, come. Away. That would be another example. So right there, somebody walked by and Buddy went over there, but he didn't bark. So this is a sign of progress. Mm-hmm. So what you want to do is you want to get him conditioned to the sound of the doorbell thing. Instead of barking at it, is to have a good positive association. So what I would do is I would have somebody outside, Buddy, sit. This is easier if you have better camera presence. Let's move you over here so people can see with a profile, because you're a good looking dog. We want to see you from the side. Over here, come. All right, go get those. So what you want to do, and it doesn't matter if profile, I'm just doing it so you can see it. Buddy, come. Sit. So what I would do is I'd be in the back of the house or muffle wherever the sound comes from. So what you want to do, the way I do it first is I would get the wellness bites or something he can chew on, Buddy, or cheese. Let him chew on it and then have them ring it. Now again, exercise him first to set him up for success. And make sure every time you're doing the stuff I talked about in the front, exercise him first, give him 10 minutes work, set him up for success. That's going to be a big factor. So at first what I do is I let him start chewing on it, then I have somebody ring the doorbell. So when he hears the doorbell, he's got this treat in his mouth. Now this is kind of backwards of how you're normally supposed to do it, but I have good success doing it this way. So then be far enough away where he can barely hear it. You might cover up whatever the speaker is with a pillow to muffle the sound. And the idea is about 4 or 5 times he hears it, and what you should see his ears move a little bit, but he doesn't bark at all. He's chewing the treat. So after we do that about 4 or 5 times, then what I do is I have them ring it. The ring happens, then I give him the treat after. What this does is this is a form of counter conditioning, but this helps the dog understand that when the doorbell rings, that means somebody's going to give me a treat. Instead of barking at that, I should be happy when I hear that sound. Now, at first, we're going to be far away. We're going to muffle the sound. Sit. But eventually what we're going to do is we're going to bring him a little bit closer or unmuffle it until we get to the point where somebody just zoomed by on a bird and he didn't do anything. So eventually we're going to get to the point where he can be as loud as possible, as loud as it normally is, and he doesn't bark at all. So for this one, again, exercise him first. This is called counter conditioning. If you forget how to do this one, message me. I have videos that kind of go through it and I can share with you if you need to. But so the first stage, be as far away as you can and muffle it. Let him chew on a treat 4 or 5 times while he's hearing it, and as long as he doesn't bark 4 or 5 times in a row, then ring it the 6th time, and after you ring it, give him the treat. And hold the treat right here in front of him so he sees it and he's kind of looking at it. And then after a while, you ring it, wait 1 second before you give him the treat. Then ring it in 2 seconds before you give him the treat. And then gradually, you get it louder and louder and louder until it's as loud as that distance is, and gradually work him closer and closer, like I talked about. Easiest version to the most difficult version. So eventually it gets to the point where he doesn't see, he's not patrolling, because right now, I mean, he's right here on the floor, you can't see him, but he's facing this way, he's looking at that window. So taking that temptation out of his eyesight is going to be crucial. I would try to do that like today or tomorrow if you can. It's going to be huge. Okay, so we also talked about rules. Now, we talked about exercise first. So I talked about the video above, but finding other ways to exercise is going to be really helpful. I would like you to go to Amazon and get a snuffle mat, S-N-U-F-F-L-E, and get a big one. Now, if he picks it up and runs around with it to get the kibble to come out, just get a dumbbell and put it on top of it. He should be fed out of both meals on the snuffle mat. I'd also like you to get a large Omega Paw treat ball. And it's an orange ball that kind of looks a little bit like a golf ball. It's got a hole. Put his kibble in it. And then twice a day, so maybe feed him, you're going to really feed him 4 times a day. I would take away maybe a cup and a half of what you normally feed him from your regular bowls, and you're going to put whatever's left of that in the snuffle mats at breakfast and dinner. Then twice a day, I'm going to have you take out that the Omega Paw treat ball, put 3/4 of a cup in it, and let him run, nudge it around. And I like to say soccer. Come up with a word. Every time he licks up a treat, a piece of kibble, say that command word. So these are the snuffle mats are equivalent to basically to 2 walks if you feed him twice a day. The puzzle gives him something to do, and that's almost equivalent to another walk. Now, if we also, so you want to take note that your neighbor is African American and she has dreadlocks, and she's not as thin as other people. Is a nice way to put it, I guess. Come away. So that would be a great one. So he didn't continue barking. So take note of that. A lot of people are like, my dog is racist. It's not racist. Maybe just somebody with dreadlocks once yelled at the dog. Or, maybe he was looking at someone with dreadlocks and then somebody slammed the door. It could be something as simple as that, and that happens all too often. So what we want to do, if we notice every time somebody with dreadlocks comes in who's African American, then we want to listen our neighbor. That would be somebody that we walk by and is throwing those treats. And we want to just deprogram it. Now, we never want to correct him for barking, because if he's barking, we say, stop it. He thinks, cool, now we're both barking. Isn't that right, buddy? Kisses. All right, so so we want to just kind of distract him and increase the distance whenever possible. All right, now exercising him is going to be to really help out. So again, if the kids come by from school at a certain time of the day, getting in that treat and train and running laps in your backyard, or the snuffle mats. Something else you can do is scent games, hiding treats around your house, and he's got to find them. Google scent games and just look for it, because there's a whole bunch of different versions of it. Some people will put like treats under 1 cup and do like the 3-card Monty with the cups, and the dog has to nudge whichever one it is. Oh no, you picked the wrong one. We do it again. These are ways to stimulate his brain. It's very draining for dogs to use their brain. And I remember on walks to let him sniff. The more that he sniffs, the better. And if he doesn't want to sniff a lot, sometimes I'll cheat. I'll take finely shredded cheese, as long as he's good with cheese, and shred and put that down. So right now I told you to kind of walk across the street if a dog is, we have a couple dogs in the neighborhood that bark and lunge and run at the fence, and that provokes a response from him. Well, eventually what we might do is maybe between the sidewalk and the street, when the dog is not there, start taking some shredded cheese and putting it a little bit in the grass, a trail of it. So now he's getting there sniffing the ground. And after he does that enough times without the dog there, then when maybe the dog is there, and talk to your neighbor about it so your neighbor knows what's going on. Otherwise, like they're antagonizing the dog. So then basically maybe you have your partner, one of you is walking him and one of you has cheese, and we're kind of doing a trail of cheese. And instead of barking at the other dog, he's practicing passing by, and sniffing is as a calming exercise. It's something dogs do to relax themselves and to indicate to the other dog that I'm not a threat or whatever. So if he starts sniffing in the yard and the other dog is barking at that dog's yard, that might help the other dog bark less. And I would also ask the neighbors, hey, would you mind if we threw little treats or pieces of cheese over your fence? I hired a dog psychologist, and he's been really working wonders with Buddy. If your neighbor does that, all the other dogs in the neighborhood are like, when Buddy comes, he's delivering cheese and treats. We like Buddy. We're not going to bark at him. Now, there were a couple labs, I think, or doodles on the other side of the street. If they have 2 dogs like that, it'd be better if you just have 1 dog out at a time when you're doing this at first, then switch it. And just ask them, and just ask your neighbors, hey, I had this guy come by, he gave me some cool tricks. My dog barks at your dogs, and your dogs bark back at my dog. Always accept blame first. If you say, your dog's barking at my dog, it makes my dog bark, then they're going to get defensive. I don't know if you notice, when we come by, my dog barks, and I think he gets your dog barking. If you say it that way, they're like, oh yeah, your dog does do that. Now, some neighbors will be a jerk, but most of the time they're like, oh yeah, I guess that happens a little bit. Our dogs bark too. Yeah, well, I hired a guy, and he showed a cool way to fix that. If everybody in the neighborhood suddenly starts doing this, that's awesome. But when there's 2 dogs, always ask the guardian number 1, but if there's 2 dogs, sometimes those dogs will fight each other. So we don't want to cause more mayhem or mischief. Okay, so we also talked about rules. Now, the guardian has done a really good job of enforcing rules here. I really didn't have any others except for making him sit at a door. So for the sit, I think the guardian might ask a little bit, sometimes too many times. So go to the door, tell him to sit 1 time. If he doesn't sit, walk away. And sit down in your kitchen area nearby, but don't tell him to sit multiple times. And no matter what he does, we ignore. After 1 minute, we go back and tell him to sit again. If he doesn't sit this time, within 3 seconds, we walk away and sit down for 2 minutes, then for 4 minutes, then for 8 minutes, keep sitting. And that's great. Pet him down and say down. And so eventually he realizes, if I don't sit, the door doesn't open. But as soon as I sit, the door flies open. And eventually then you can have him sit and do the wait. Now, when you're doing the wait, I would come up with a command word that needs to go outside and one that needs to go inside. Different words. And so you say wait, and then you go out, and then you drop a treat, and then when he comes out and licks up the treat, then you would say maybe outside if you want to use it, but I would kind of use something funny. Disneyland. means to go outside, or adventure means outside. Mansion means go inside. And so when you're outside, tell him to sit, wait, open the door, throw the treat inside. He runs in and gets it, and then you say mansion. So now you're creating a command word to go outside and to go inside, and he waits for it. And the more he waits for that, that's great demonstration of your leadership. Also, quick note, a lot of people, when they're training their dogs to ring a bell to go potty, they hang it from the doorbell or doorknob, which is confusing that to the dog, because dogs look to association, repetition, and good timing. That'll tell a dog the doorbell, or ring the bell at the door means open the door or means to go outside. So he might ring it and say, I want to go yell at people on the fence. So what we'd like to do is hang it next to the door. And that way, when he nudges it, then we go and open the door and let him outside. Now, the way that I sync that up with pottying is I would take the bell outside, and I'm really impressed with the Guardians because they're the first people I've seen in like 7 years that actually have a bell. Everybody else jingle bells. These are actual school bells. That's really hard to find. And so basically what you want to do is when you go outside, when you have it with you and don't make any noises, as soon as he starts to pee or poop, gently ring it while he's peeing or pooping. That makes a classically conditioned response. So then he starts to associate the bell with going potty. Right now, he probably is confused and thinking that means go outside. Okay, I also talked about petting with a purpose and passive training. These things are probably going to be more helpful for you guys than just about anything else that we went over except for what's in the video. Well, there's a lot of stuff I'm going over, but it's very important. These are going to seem really simple. Leaders tell, followers ask. Right now, Bud comes up and gets in people's face. So what I'd like you to do when he gets in your face is just disengage, and if he persists, stand up. And don't even reward him, because I think I saw what happened a couple times. He got in her face, and then the Guardian petted him. Remember, anything your dog is doing when you pet it is what you're rewarding, and this includes unbalanced states of mind like excitement, fear, stress, anxiety, aggression. So if he's nervous, you can lay your hand on him, and they do associate touch with affection, but as soon as you start petting, you'll amplify it. So, and the best thing to do is increase the distance. So now the flip side of that is anything the dog does in your presence that you don't disagree with, you're giving 2 thumbs up to. So if he's barking at the window and you ignore it, that's kind of saying, I'm cool with you barking at the window. What I would probably do is, again, cover it up, but if he does go over there and bark, walk over there silently, put your back to the window, and do what the exercise I showed you on the floor, walk towards him and make him walk away from the area. He's just gonna run and bark over here. But again, if the windows are covered, that's gonna really take away that validation. But you wanna disagree the first bark, not let him bark for 3 times and then disagree. He goes, oh, the third bark is what you don't like. Okay, so I call this petting with a purpose, and that's exactly what it is. Petting your dog for a reason. Most of us pet our dogs for the wrong reason. It invades our space, we pet it. Good attention, bad attention for dogs is the same thing. So it chews your carpet, and then you correct it, or it barks and you correct it. Well, I want your attention. I don't care what attention I get, then I'm gonna chew your carpet, or bark, or run at the fence. So this is a good way to help fix that. So I guess I'll talk about passive training first. Passive training is simply recognizing when the dog does those behaviors that we do like, rewarding them within 3 seconds, but doing this when the dog does it on its own. So every time the buddy comes to you, pet him and say, come. Every time he lays down, pet him and say, down. Every time he sits, pet him and say, sit. Name all of his individual toys and come up with, call it Pokemon or whatever it is. And so each toy has its own unique word, and try to come up with funny command words. Remember, they can read facial expression. So there's somebody walking out there in front of the house. He's seeing him. Normally he'd be barking. There we go. Got a little bit. That all happened because he saw it. He didn't hear anything. Every time he does that, that's practice at barking at the window. That's another great illustration why that white paper wouldn't have happened right there. And when it doesn't happen enough, he just gets out of a habit of it. All right, so passive training, every time that the dog does something you want to reward them and mark it by saying the command word. Every time he drinks water, I say agua for my dogs. Come. This is a good example. He just came. I didn't ask him to come, but the end result is still to come, and I petted him, and I said just the command word. Remember, they hear the first word you say. So don't say, good sit, say just sit. Just the command word. And be careful how you say it. If I say sit, and he sits, I say sit. Those are completely different command words to dogs. They hear inflection. So usually just the one command word. So every time that he sits or lays down or comes, drinks water, come up with your favorite type of food. I can't remember what the type of food the Guardian likes, but I say grub, chow, feast, and lasagna. So people always laugh when I say lasagna. My dog starts eating, but it's a funny command word. So he's going to up it down. He just laid down. Within 3 seconds of him laying down, I petted him and said the word down. This way he's like, well, they sure like it when I sit, when I lay down, when I come, when I drink water. These are things that they immediately stop what they're doing and give me attention. I'm going to do these things more often to get attention. Right now, what he learns is invading people's personal space and kind of jumping up or putting his paw on them. So to avoid that sort of stuff, you need to stop petting him for no reason. That's what I would call petting with a purpose, which just started earlier. Petting with a purpose is exactly what it sounds like, petting with a reason. Leaders tell, followers ask. So next time he comes up and invades your space or nudges you, give him a counter order, tell him to sit one time. If he's already sitting here, ask him to sit here, or ask him to lay down. If he sits or lays down within 3 seconds, pet him and say, just sit, and then pet him as much or as little as you want. If he doesn't sit within 3 seconds, playing hard to get works great for dating, it works great for dog training too. So if he doesn't do what you want, lean back, disengage, pull out your phone, watch some TV, make out with your husband, whatever you want to do, but tell the dog, so right now I'm not petting him because he's invading my personal space. I might not mind this, but if he does it with me and I'm his guardian, he's going to do it with everybody. So that's why I didn't pet for that. So right there, tell him to sit.
Sit.
Now the guardian here could probably be a little bit more assertive. You're a little bit quiet, and so a little bit more assertive and a little bit louder will help. Lowering your voice also is more helpful for dogs. Higher pitch creates more excitement and dogs don't listen as much. So right there, tell me again, sit.
Sit.
And then pet him on his chin and say sit.
Sit.
Perfect. That was a little bit of a delay, but the clicker training you did outside that we have in the video above, I would do that inside too. Sit, click. Get to the point where you say sit, you don't even get past the S and his butt is on the ground. And then as soon as he sits, tell him to crash, or excuse me, lay down or down. Then walk over there and do it there, do it there, do it there, do it all over your house. He's just like, Jesus, man, I just sit anywhere and she's throwing treats in my mouth. Yes. We want to get to the point where he is one of the smarter dogs that I've worked with. I have 4,000 dogs. Come, you're pretty smart too, little guy. But the more that we stimulate those dogs, the better. And this helps the dog see it. I can't tell the humans what to do anymore. I have to ask, and better than ask, they always make me sit. Sitting is a more subordinate position. What'll happen after time, he'll realize he can't tell you what to do. Instead of invading your space, he'll come sit in front of you to prepay for the attention. When he does, make sure you pet him under his chin and say sit at least, and pet him at least once. Otherwise, he'll go back to nudging you or pawing at you. Now, if he does it multiple times, then it probably means he's some exercise, and take him outside, play the fetch game that I showed you, or the treat and train, or get out the little Omega Paw treat ball. Fill it up with some kibble, let him roll it around. Also, if you go to Lowe's or Home Depot, they have this fencing that you can use to create an actual barricade. Right now, the one that you have is, he's a smart dog. He knows how to get under it or move it out of the side. So this stuff, I would make sure it goes all the way down to the bottom, and it's about 4 feet tall, and it's a roll. So just cut it so exactly there. You might just put a couple like nails in that post or whatever it is, so you can just kind of flip it over that, or come up with something so that a bungee or something so it allows you to attach it, and that way you can kind of put it across. And that way he doesn't have the ability to run to your front yard. Just like not being able to run to the window and yell, or bark, he won't be able to do that, and that'll help him get out of the habit of doing that. Okay, so I'm trying to think. The other thing is, the rollover. So you're going to have to get a bigger piece of carpet because you need kind of a big area. And right here we had to move the table across. And so if you have another area somewhere else, or you might try it in your yard. That would be a good place to do it as well. But what you want to do is the first stage is you want him just to lay down on his side. And so when he does that, just give him a treat. Don't say anything. Unless you want to create a command word. I call it flop, means lay on your side. So teach him a flop command. And you use passive training for that. Every time he comes and lays down on his side, here, reach over and pet him and say flop, or whatever the word is you want to use for that. Now, if the dog whimpers and you pet, then that would be, I will whimper more to get your pet. And I know you're doing that to the video, but I don't really care. This is just for you. That's a lot of people do that around whimpers, and they pet it or pick it up. Well, picking the dog up, that's a reward. That makes me whimper more to get your attention. Sitting, petting every time I sit, will make me sit for it. So let's look for positive things for that. So every time he lays down on his side, pet him and say flop or whatever the word is you want. So the first stage is to get him into a flop position. Then you're going to take the treat. If I'm the dog, I'm laying down. I'm going to do it this way, but, here. I'll actually lay down on the couch and show you. So if I'm in a flop position, I want to take the treat and I want to go this way. I want the dog's head going here and then up. So it's really kind of diagonal. And at first you give him the treat when he goes this high. Then eventually he gets the treat this high. And what will happen is he'll start lifting his paws and his legs up, kind of like I am. And when he gets to this point, you can show him that you have a treat and drop it here, and he'll roll over all the way. But make sure he's at least halfway up. This is a ridiculous video, but make sure he's at least halfway up before you start throwing it. And if he goes back this way and then gets up to get it, pick that treat up. So you might have to just do it a lot, and he might have several sessions where all he does is just turn his head. But make sure he's not turning it up this way. He should be turning it towards his shoulder and backwards. That will create that pulling the legs over. And so eventually you'll get to the point where he'll do it over and over, and then you can get him to roll over. And then once he rolls over completely and gets the treat, I use the word stunt dog. That's my command word for it. But you can call it any word you want. Roll over is fine. But again, I would recommend trying to come up with funny words. Call it sushi roll if you like sushi. And so come up with something that's kind of funny that's going to make people laugh. I'm trying to think, what else? Is there anything else you want me to cover? Oh, the Treat and Train. Make sure you get that. I think I talked about it online. It's from PetSafe or Sport Dog is the company that have been merged. So if you can't find that, please message me, and I'm happy to send you a link to it. I'm not sure. I have a wholesale account. I think they're probably about $100, $120. But man, that thing will really help because you can condition him to move away from the fence. Now, if you have any questions on any of the things we went over or anything else, please let me know. And I'm only a phone call away. I have plenty of videos and texts I can show you. So that was a Caucasian man, tall, with glasses. Buddy, come, sit. But you're coming away from that a lot faster. Well, this is Bud, or Buddy. And I forgot your name already.
Chibi.
Chibi. Sit. We gotta love the old dogs. I just lost one of my old dogs, and you gotta love those old dogs. And while this is Bud and Chibi's roadmap to success, remember, everything you do trains your dog. Only sometimes you mean it.